Hey everyone, it is a fresh character. It's a fresh wheel build. The last one was a big success. I love that you did and I'm excited to go again. I spin the wheel and it is. Flamethrower trap. I'll be honest, I barely know that is a skill because I hardly ever play traps and I don't think I've seen this before. So definitely it's time for some research, starting with the wiki. This trap is apparently a spell that throws a trap that summons a flamethrower. This flamethrower has 4 beams or columns of flames. It's fire-based damage, it's hit-based, so it's not channeling or damage over time. Tags are spell, trap, duration, AoE and fire. It doesn't have a Val or transfigured version. Added damage effectiveness is 30%, which just seems incredibly low, but this thing does have 4 beams to maybe make up for it. I see the Shadow gets it as a quest reward, so I will probably play that. It's only available at level 28, so I'll have to play something else before that. At gem level 20 it does 243 to 366 fire damage. I think that is per beam. All in all, there's very little additional information on the wiki about this skill. I opened the path of building just to see where the trap nodes are. That's how much I play traps. Looks like I'll be playing a saboteur. I don't really see any reason to play something else. This is already going to be hard enough, I feel. So let's play the ascendancy made for traps. I make a quick loot filter just like last time, hiding armor types and weapons that I can't use. And I decide to look at the wiki for traps in general as a mechanic, which is very helpful. I learned about several of those mechanics, for example that they can be damaged, about trap trigger area of effect, trap throwing speed, some of the trap support gems, and very importantly, how traps typically scale. Armed with this knowledge, it's time to arm some traps and release them on unsuspecting monsters. I create a shadow, loot the load filter I just made and we're off to the races. The first hurdle is Hillock, we've been here before of course. As a reward I decide to stay close to the skill that I will be playing, so I take Explosive Trap. The only support gem available right now is Chance to Poison, so I will link to that. I equip magic boots without movement speed, check for movement speed but to no avail, sell the rest and decide to path via elemental damage to the first trap node. I do a quick test with Explosive Trap. Not much damage, but the poison works for what that's worth. While being chased by Roas, I stutter step, use a trap and it's pretty clunky, but effective, kind of. The first merc goes down. I'm kinda surprised you can throw traps that far, and I get a helmet. I spec some points, dual wield a wand as spell damage skills with traps. I get rare gloves, kill Hill Rake, notice that damage on Explosive Trap isn't bad as it seems the explosions can overlap, and does shotgun, get my Quicksilver, get elemental proliferation support, get Bear Trap which makes enemies take increased damage from traps, and do a quick swap. I link Explosive Trap to elemental proliferation. I have Swift Assembly support but I can't use it, so I slot it unlinked just to level it up. I do decide actually to link Bear Trap to Chance to Poison and test out the new setup. Elemental proliferation by traps works quite well, but I played Ignite already last run, I'm not gonna do it again. Only for now until I get something better. The crab goes down, I take Trickery, I identify these gloves from before, get 3 link white boots so I can add Swift Assembly to Explosive Trap, kill a merc for some currency, and on a 3 link the build looks like this. It's slow, I have 0 movement speed, but it works, which is all that matters for now. More mercs, more money. I get the first trial, I take Saboteur for 30% increased trap damage. Here's my first death after being frozen. I find the secret flask section, kill everyone, and my reward is a measly single Quicksilver flask. But hey, that's all I really want anyway. I equip a Scepter with flat spell damage, which should work. Try my luck with the boots, hoping to get movement speed, which I don't get. Pick a chain belt to wear from this merc and manage to kill her quite quickly. Also fairly quickly is my Brutus kill. Damage isn't the issue here. Mana is, as I have only 1 crappy mana flask. But after Brutus decides to chase me while walking into a bunch of explosive traps, he goes down. I take multiple traps as a reward. The support gem, not actually multiple traps. Throwing 3 traps seems like a good deal. I swap out Swift Assembly for it. Decide to replace Elemental Prolapse with added lightning for some more flat damage. To me, that makes sense. I level the support gems I don't use now, but may use in the future in the offhand. I take and activate Clarity to solve some mana issues, and here you see the multiple traps in action. They are thrown in a line, 3 traps. It feels pretty good to use. It's not the most damage I've ever seen a character do on Innocence Green Earth, but it's not horrible either. I start making my way to the next trap cluster. My plan for the passive tree is to take all the trap nodes and then whatever else makes sense that is near those nodes, likely life, evasion and spell suppression, plus some damage one way or another. A Rogue Exile drops a Sapphire Ring, great from Merville in a bit. A Rare drops an Iron Ring, which I can trade for a Sapphire Ring at the vendor if I combine it with a blue skill gem, or any blue gem really. Fairgraves goes down in no time, which makes me believe single target could be decent in the end. Fast moving targets like this mercenary are more tricky, that's clear as well. I take Expeditious Munitions for trigger AoE effect and trap throwing speed. As a quest reward it's Fire Trap, I trade for the Sapphire Ring, and as a trap mastery decide that recovering 30 life when a trap is triggered should be good sustain. I swap Explosive Trap for Fire Trap, assuming that is better. Sometimes I have a good reason for my actions, or at least I think I do. Sometimes I just want to use Fire Trap. It's not bad though, as you can see over here. I use the same support gems, by the way. Time for Merville, which is a very comfortable fight. I combine Bear Trap for increased damage taken with Fire Traps. Fire Trap is a very decent AoE, as you can tell. It does decent damage. I'm not unhappy about this at all. She goes down and it's time for Act 2. I dropped a 3-link energy shield evasion chest and I use my only chromatic orb on it for the right colors. I want to be able to wear movement speed boots and my trap is trapped in the boots right now. These new boots are pretty good, so this is a great swap. Fidelitas goes down, I take this amulet from a merc, some more attributes. I take Skitterbots for chill, shock and more trap damage, seems like a no-brainer. For some reason single target seems a bit worse in Act 2 with Caitlyn here, I'm not sure why. A mercenary provides a nice new helmet with the right sockets, which means I can equip a new chest. I also get a new scepter with spell fire damage. I color it so I can run Clarity, and with these small upgrades damage is back to being decent. I kill Oak as well, it takes a while but this is a tanky guy. I've taken some life myself and path towards the next trap cluster, kill the black guards, slot in the thing, decide to help Alira, 1 point for 15% elemental resistances, that's a good deal in SSF. I find 2 essences next to each other, it's always good to have a few of these. Kill the Weaver, take trap and mind damage support for 30% more damage, that's only level 1 by the way. Ruin an amulet with the corruption altar, and here you see me progress through the northern forest. It's very smooth with multiple fire traps exploding in sequence. It's time for the Vaal Oversoul, but not before completing the trap cluster and taking the Traps Cannot Be Damaged mastery. The Vaal Oversoul takes a while, damage is far from amazing, but my recovery is very decent. I have enough mana sustain, all in all this is a comfy fight. He goes down, meaning it's time for Act 3. I get a good rare amulet from a mercenary and here's the first piety encounter. She had enough.
Enough of this!
Me too, to be honest. The reward is flammability as a curse. That makes sense with fire damage, I would say. I get a great leather chest from a merc with resistances and my first 4-link also from a merc. I reached the next trap cluster and take the trigger AoE mastery, which means I think traps are triggered from further away. Gravicious gets trapped to death, here's piety again, damage I think is okay, pretty average, right? That 30 life recovery is a game changer however. And then, lovely people, there it is, flamethrower trap. So it's time to get set up. I replace fire trap for flamethrower trap. I replaced multiple traps for trap and mind damage support and added lightning for combustion that I leveled in the offhand. I identify a great amulet, so I put that on. I take unstable munitions, 30% increased trap damage. I level some more gems in the offhand and I gamble a chest armor because I want a 4-link, which I get after 2 tries. I color it, I think green, green, blue, red is workable. I put fire trap back in the helmet, it may come in handy. After all, I have no clue how good flamethrower trap is. I hover over a bunch of support gems in Act 2, see if anything makes sense to me. Elemental focus perhaps. In Act 1 I do the same thing, I just don't see a clear winner. Time to try it out. Here's how it works. And There's something weird because it doesn't work like the other traps I've used so far. It has a limit. I can only store 4 uses, throw them out, and then I must wait for the cooldown until a new one is available. That feels pretty bad. That's probably the first issue I need to tackle somehow. Something else that's not great, the damage. But it is a 3 link, so I guess not the end of the world, and the gem is level 1 right now. And in my confusion I also died to a mercenary while testing. I'm sure you can tell I'm incredibly excited at this point about the skill that I can only use every 5 seconds and does 0 damage. I can't consistently have flamethrower traps up as I simply don't have enough charges, so I use both the main skill and fire traps as a substitute. But in reality, fire trap does like 4 times the damage at this point, so you should consider that is the main skill. But okay, I just need to survive and find upgrades. I decided to do the library quest to check out more support gems. Charged traps seems like fun. I know how this works on mines with power siphon mines, which felt great, so for traps it should be similar. And it is, it feels great. The way I feel I can solve the flamethrower issue is by investing in duration so they last longer. The second solution would be more charges, if that exists. I have +1 from a cluster. And the third solution is cooldown recovery rate, so the charges replenish faster. Maybe then I can use it as a main skill. With that logic, I decided to get more duration support, even though I don't have the attributes yet for it. That's something I can fix down the line. Here is some Dominus footage still on 2-3 links. You can see the flamethrower trap charging, and it takes ages to get to a new charge. However, I do notice that on static bosses this skill is not half bad. It's a bit of a niche situation, but you know, there's hope. Dominus dies, I try to prevent the god touching me, you know, that seems just like a good idea. I'm just using traps, and this time it's time for Act 4. I got a new shield. I didn't have a rare shield before. I buy a heavy belt to fix my strength, make it rare, equip it, and slot in that more duration support. That should help. A merc that keeps running away, which is terrible for my build, gives a Rimsoro. That's more strength, so that's good. On the other hand, a Vol here with 3 flamethrower traps on him takes a lot of damage, and he won't be the last. I also take a lot of damage after getting frozen by a strongbox and I die. A merc gives me new boots with 20% movement speed. Or how about this guy dropping an exalted orb and good single target damage too once more. I get a +1 fire spell shield, that should help. I do a bit more gambling because I want fire trap on a 4 link as well. I link fire trap to charged traps, combustion and trap and mine damage. I do the lab, and here is how fast Izaro gets phased. It's pretty fast. This works quite well, burning the ground with fire trap, making the flamethrower do 25% more damage. I don't hate it. High quality flamethrower trap that increases cooldown recovery so it replenishes faster. I ascend to a saboteur, and because I feel the CDR is so important, I take like clockwork for a 30% increased CDR. I fix my resistances a little bit. I get a Kakizaru ring from a mercenary, which is a decent leveling unique. I type in duration to see how I can increase that, and I'm going to make my way to that duration cluster over here. There's a trap cluster nearby as well. Here is some Duresso's single target damage, which is really starting to shine. I kill a merc for Paranda's Blazon or Blazon, decent build, lots of attributes, more single target showcasing, comb, and I can definitely see the potential of this skill as a boss killer down the line. Once all the stars align, I might actually be fine. I decide to equip that Kakizaru, get an upgrade from a mercenary. Here's the damage on the next iteration of Piety, and that means it is Malakai's turn, which, thanks to solid single target damage and the flamethrower trap that comes off cooldown a lot faster, is a walk in the park. In Act 5, I mostly continue my plans. Path towards duration and trap clusters in the center of the passive tree, fight Kitava, which is not an issue at all, similar to Malakai, no surprise there. I drop a Rotgut, and as I'm using frenzy charges, that's a decent Quicksilver flask. I have a Jade flask as well now from a quest reward. Tsukuhama fails, I get a Divine Orb, the first one of the run. Here are some Instilling Orbs from a mercenary. After a very quick fight, here's some more evidence that bosses truly start to melt, with Brutus and Chevron phasing in mere seconds. I find a +1 fire wand from a merc. I imagine scaling levels on traps is a good idea. It really doesn't take long to kill this mercenary to get me that wand. I reached the duration cluster. The Brine King is an easy fight because he doesn't move, so he takes full damage from the traps. I think these 4 beams can hit the same target all at once if that target is big enough. I complete the duration cluster and take the more duration mastery. I gamble some new 4-link gloves with tons of life on there, and I do the exact same thing for a helmet. I also gamble a new ring that makes 3 great upgrades. I craft a bit on these pieces for defenses and resistances, and I use all the armor scraps that I have. I start running Val's side areas to hopefully get better links. I get a new belt from a merc with good resists. Maligaro falls. I craft some strength on that belt so I have enough of it. I'm now elemental res capped, but I do lack chaos resistance. I start leveling a grace gem. I one-shot Groost in his hideout with 4 flamethrower traps. The same is true for Gruthkol, who dies very fast as well. I leveled up my clarity too much, so I get a level 1 gem instead to level that to level 5. I get a ruby ring from a merc, burn a spider while I'm at it, get an instant recovery life flask. Equip that ruby ring from that merc, and there's more mercs, more rings. This one has chaos resistance, which I sorely need. I get some currency from yet another mercenary. I one-shot more bosses, this time it is Doedry. I know one-shot is relative, but for this type of run I consider this a one-shot for all intents and purposes, although in reality it is death by 1,000 hard-hitting flaming needles. This is a great body armor, tons of res at this stage of the game. I get Val Grace from a side area, equip that new body armor and the Val Grace. I find this fancy new belt with all the stuff I need. Resistances start to look pretty decent at this point, and talking about resistances, here is another beautiful ring, again from a mercenary. I don't know why I would do any other content really. Here's another, more chaos resistance. And the next one, which has a 5-link. The base armor evasion isn't great, and thus the socket collars aren't either, but I will take any 5-link at this point. The guy stays nicely, my flamethrower traps, drops the gear, I equip it, spend some chrome on it until I get the collars I can at least work with, and I decide that another red support gem has to be fire penetration, as I really don't see anything else that would work right now. It is time to throw some flames at 2 celestial bodies. I think betrayal should be pretty decent too with this skill, now that I think about it, and these guys drop a nice ring which unveils chaos and fire res. And talking about chaos res, how about this ring? Pretty good, I would say. Yes, that's an upgrade. I get a quartz flask as a quest reward. Avarius decides to stay in the same spot for 5 seconds, which turns out to be a mistake. It is time for some lab runs before we finish the campaign, so I kill Izaro and take chain reaction. Mostly because it's traps, but also, as it turns out, the 50% increased area of effect applies to flamethrower trap, so now the beams are a lot bigger, covering much more terrain. Same is true for fire trap AoE by the way, and you can see both in this clip. In lab 3, Izaro dies again. I add 10% quality to flamethrower trap for CDR, and I take Pyromaniac, making me immune to ignite and shock, plus add a bunch of life regen. I think this is a decent choice for mapping, at least for now. When I rolled Flamethrower Trap, I wasn't sure what to think. At this point during the run, I did a YouTube search, and apparently this skill was popular around 6 to 7 years ago. I could find very little recent material, however. I didn't play much back then, so I missed that this was a popular skill. Otherwise, seems no one plays it these days, so that's gonna be interesting. It's pretty clear to me, however, that using just Flamethrower Trap for mapping isn't a great idea, so for now my plan is to go hybrid like you see in this footage. Fire Trap synergizes well with Flamethrower it seems, because the Fire Trap ignites and burns enemies, which makes the Flamethrower Trap do more damage. I can use Fire Trap for clear, as there's no limit on how many I can use. Well, there is 15, but I would never reach that. And then on a rare or unique or map boss, I drop 4 Flamethrower Traps, which should work, in my mind at least. I'll take another look at support gems at the start of mappings to see if I can spot some easy improvements for gems that I want to use. In terms of defenses, I went Evasion Energy Shield, as traps also require Dex and Int. Plus I have those nodes all around me in the passive tree. For now I will stay life based, as I should have 10% life regen and 30 life gain on trap trigger, so I would suspect sustain to be pretty okay as long as I don't get one shot. In terms of build idea or build philosophy, I feel this could be, in theory, a pretty decent bosser, especially on stationary bosses, so I am looking forward to that as I'm usually playing mappers, and the last wheel build with Fireball Ignite was also a clear speed build. This, however, seems to have high potential for single target damage. I also think stacking some power and frenzy charges makes sense with the trap clusters and charged trap support, plus they're close to me in the passive tree. I'm aware from the wiki there are some trap related uniques, but really not a whole lot it seems, so we'll see if we find any of those. Sunblast belt I have in regular mercenary SSF, but obviously I don't have it here, it's a super rare drop. Tinker skin is more common, but who knows. First let's blast some maps and see how the build feels to play. That will be in the next episode, however, dear viewers. I'm at 6 pages of script, which typically translates into around 20 minutes of runtime, so I want to thank you all for the support, for sticking around to the end, for watching, and I really appreciate it. I hope to see you in the next one, so subscribe and like and hit the bell so you don't miss that episode. Love you all, see you soon, bye bye.